On a snowy night, when everyone was nestled in their warm homes, an old man sat by his window, watching the world outside. Suddenly, a faint whimper caught his attention. He listened closely. The sound was soft, yet filled with pain. His heart clenched. With trembling hands, he opened the door and stepped outside. The icy wind bit at his skin, but he ignored it. His eyes searched the snow-covered ground until they landed on a small, shivering figure. A tiny puppy, half buried in the snow, struggling between life and death. Howard's breath hitched. He looked around. There was no one in sight. Should he close the door and walk away? Could he leave this helpless creature to freeze? In a quiet little town in America, where everyone was lost in their own busy lives, Mr. Howard lived in solitude. He was nearly 70, and his days passed in the same routine. Every morning, he took his wooden cane, walked to the nearby park, and sat on a bench, watching the world move around him. Then, as the sun set, he returned to his small, empty house. His wife had passed away years ago. His children had moved to different cities, their lives too full to look back. His friends had drifted away with time. Now, silence was his only companion. But that night, everything changed. Howard knelt down. The puppy let out another weak whimper, but didn't move. It was too cold, too exhausted. Gently, he picked up the frail body. The little creature trembled in his arms, its heartbeat weak but steady. A warmth spread through Howard's chest, something he hadn't felt in years. He carried the puppy inside, placing it gently on the couch. The poor thing was starving. Without hesitation, Howard warmed some milk, broke a few pieces of bread, and set them in front of his unexpected guest. The puppy hesitated at first, then, realizing it was safe, devoured the food. Howard watched in silence. He grabbed a towel, carefully rubbing warmth back into the tiny body before wrapping it in a soft blanket. The puppy's eyes, once filled with fear, now looked up at him with something different. Trust, gratitude, a silent thank you. Howard smiled for the first time in years. He studied the little creature and chuckled softly. "Let's call you Buddy. From now on, you're my friend." That night, he placed a small cushion near his bed. As Buddy curled up on it, he let out a soft sigh, a sound of relief, of belonging. Howard lay back, his eyes on the tiny creature. For the first time in years, his home didn't feel empty. And just like that, life had returned to his world. The next morning, as Howard woke up, he found Buddy sitting near the couch, wagging his tail excitedly. The moment Howard opened his eyes, Buddy ran toward him, licking his hands with pure joy. It was a new feeling, an unfamiliar warmth settling in his heart after so long. With a soft smile, Howard gently ran his hand over Buddy's head and said, "You really were meant to stay with me, little friend." Howard prepared breakfast, and for the first time in years, he enjoyed sharing a meal with someone. He placed a bowl of milk and soft bread in front of Buddy, who happily devoured it. After breakfast, Howard decided they should go outside. He put on his old jacket, and Buddy immediately stood near the door, as if he already understood they were heading out. As they stepped onto the street, people turned to look, surprised. The old man who was always seen alone now had a tiny companion by his side, and for the first time, he looked happy. Some neighbors smiled at the sight, and a young woman stopped and asked, "Mr. Howard, where did this adorable little one come from?" Howard decided that he would train Buddy with some basic commands so he could become more disciplined and well-mannered. Every morning he would take Buddy to the park and try to teach him different signals. At first, Buddy was nothing but playful mischief, running in circles and confusing Howard. But slowly, he began to learn. Within just a few weeks, Buddy had mastered basic commands like sit, come, and stay. Howard felt a sense of pride. His little friend was not only loyal, but also intelligent. Every time Buddy obeyed a command, Howard would reward him with a small biscuit. One day, while they were at the park, Howard let Buddy roam freely so he could play. Suddenly, Buddy seemed to sense something unusual and took off running. Howard called out, but Buddy dashed in a single direction, determined. By the time Howard caught up, he found Buddy standing next to a small child who had fallen to the ground and was crying. Howard quickly bent down, picking up the child and looking around. Nearby, a woman came running, most likely the child's mother. She looked panicked at first, but as soon as she saw her child safe and unharmed, tears of gratitude welled up in her eyes. "Is this your dog? He's so smart. If it weren't for him, my child could have been seriously hurt." Howard turned to Buddy, who was wagging his tail, as if he knew he had done something good. That day, Howard realized, Buddy wasn't just a pet, he was a true hero. Howard and Buddy's bond grew stronger with each passing day. Buddy was no longer just a companion. He had become the very center of Howard's happiness. His daily routine now had a new meaning. They would go to the park together, spend time at a nearby cafe, and return home in the evening to relax side by side. One day, Howard noticed that Buddy was behaving strangely. He wasn't as cheerful as before and would often sit quietly, lost in thought. Howard assumed he might be feeling unwell, so he immediately took him to a nearby veterinary clinic. The doctor examined Buddy and reassured Howard that he simply needed more rest and a nutritious diet. Without wasting any time, Howard arranged for better food and took even greater care of his loyal friend. One day, Howard himself began feeling unusually exhausted. He dismissed it as a mere effect of aging and didn't pay much attention. However, as days went by, his condition worsened. He often felt dizzy. And then, one day, while walking with Buddy in the park, he suddenly collapsed, unconscious. Buddy panicked. He began barking loudly, trying to get someone's attention. But at that moment, the park was nearly empty. Looking at Howard, then glancing around desperately, Buddy made a decision. He had to get help. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the cafe where he and Howard often spent time together. Inside, a waiter noticed Buddy's restless behavior and found it odd. Buddy was usually calm and playful, but today, he looked anxious. Buddy tugged at the waiter's pants, then quickly turned and ran toward the park, urging the man to follow. The waiter hesitated for only a moment before realizing something was wrong. He rushed after Buddy. When they reached the park, Howard was still lying on the ground, unconscious. The waiter immediately called an ambulance. Within minutes, medical staff arrived and began attending to Howard. Buddy refused to leave his side. He licked Howard's face, nudging him gently, as if trying to wake him up. Even when the ambulance arrived, Buddy was determined to go with him, but the staff had to hold him back. As the ambulance drove away, Buddy ran all the way to the hospital and sat by the entrance, waiting for his dearest friend to return. Howard received timely medical attention. When he finally opened his eyes, his first thought was of Buddy. The waiter recounted the entire story, how Buddy had run for help and, in doing so, saved his life. Tears welled up in Howard's eyes. He had always thought of himself as Buddy's protector. But today, Buddy had proven that love and loyalty are never one-sided. Howard had to spend 2 days in the hospital. The doctors explained that his sudden weakness and unconsciousness were due to anemia and exhaustion. They strictly advised him to take better care of his diet and get enough rest. But for Howard, the most painful part was not being able to see Buddy. He repeatedly asked the nurses, "Is my friend okay? Is he waiting for me outside?" Meanwhile, Buddy sat near the hospital entrance, watching every time the doors opened. His hopeful eyes searched for Howard. But when he didn't appear, Buddy would lower his head in disappointment. The hospital staff was astonished by the loyalty of this little dog. Finally, on the 3rd day, Howard was discharged. The moment he stepped outside, Buddy spotted him and bolted toward him, wrapping himself around Howard's legs. Howard's eyes welled up with joy. He knelt down and embraced Buddy tightly, as if he had found a lost treasure. "My boy, you saved my life," Howard whispered. Buddy responded by licking his hand, expressing his emotions in the only way he knew how. After returning home, Howard made a firm decision. He would never let himself feel lonely again. He resolved to spend the rest of his days in the best way possible, alongside Buddy. He started paying attention to his health and diet, ensuring that Buddy would never have to face such a situation again. Their daily routine became even more delightful. They woke up early, took morning walks in the fresh air, and Howard focused on eating healthier meals. Buddy, too, became more energetic than ever. Every day they visited the park, where children and other visitors began to adore Buddy. The waiter, who had helped save Howard, shared their story on social media. Within no time, the post went viral. Buddy was hailed as a hero dog, and people from all over began sending messages to Howard. Local news channels also picked up the story and requested interviews. "How do you feel, Mr. Howard?" a reporter asked. Howard smiled at Buddy and said, "For the first time in my life, I truly feel that I'm not alone. Buddy is my most precious friend. He didn't just save my life, he gave me a new reason to live." Buddy, as if understanding every word, wagged his tail happily. This was a story that not only changed their lives, but also inspired an entire town with its message of love, loyalty, and selflessness. Howard and Buddy's story had become famous throughout the town. People would come to the park just to see Buddy, express their love for him, and admire Howard for taking in and raising the innocent creature so well. Buddy was no longer just a pet. He had become the town's hero. One day there was a knock on Howard's door. When he opened it, a young woman stood outside with a man holding a camera. "Mr. Howard, I'm Lucy Adams, and I work with an animal rescue organization. We heard Buddy's story and would love to learn more about it." Howard, surprised, invited them inside and began recounting Buddy's journey. How he had found him in the snow, how he had saved him, and how in return, Buddy had saved his life. Lucy listened with fascination. And when Howard finished, she smiled and said, "This is truly an incredible story. Our organization helps many homeless animals, and we'd love for Buddy to be an ambassador for them. If you agree, we'd like to showcase Buddy as a hero to inspire more people to adopt rescue animals." Howard immediately loved the idea. He knew how many animals wandered the streets, abandoned and alone. If Buddy could help even a few of them find loving homes, it would be an honor. A few days later, Howard and Buddy were invited to an animal rescue center. The place was filled with homeless dogs and cats, all waiting for a second chance at life. The moment Buddy arrived, he mingled with the other dogs, playing with them and spreading joy. Children and adults alike gathered around to take pictures with Buddy, and by the end of the day, several people had decided to adopt animals. Watching this, Howard felt an overwhelming sense of joy. He realized he had made the right decision. Buddy was no longer just his companion. He had become a symbol of hope for so many others. Buddy's popularity continued to grow, and Howard didn't mind at all. In fact, this was something new for him too. Once a lonely man, he now found himself stepping into a new world. Invitations to events poured in. People wanted to hear his story, and for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. One evening, as Howard ran his hand over Buddy's head, he smiled and said, "You're not just a dog, my friend. You've changed my world." Buddy wagged his tail happily and licked Howard's hand, as if to say, "And you've changed mine too." This was a bond that no amount of money could buy, a connection built on love, loyalty, and an unbreakable friendship that would last forever. Days of joy passed swiftly for Howard and Buddy. Howard had found a new purpose in life, and Buddy was more energetic and happier than ever. But fate never grants an easy path. An unexpected trial awaited them both. It was a cold December evening. As Howard and Buddy strolled through the park, as they did every day, Howard suddenly felt unwell. A wave of dizziness washed over him. His breathing grew heavy, his hands trembled, and before he could comprehend what was happening, his vision blurred. His legs gave way, and he collapsed near a bench. Buddy, always by Howard's side, rushed to him immediately. He sniffed his face, nudging him desperately. But there was no response. Panic surged through Buddy. He barked, loud, urgent cries that echoed through the park. A few people turned to look, but most dismissed it as just another dog making noise. Buddy's race, a battle against time. Buddy didn't know what to do. He looked around, his heart pounding. Then, suddenly, an idea struck him. He took off running, his small legs pushing against the cold pavement, his speed faster than ever before. Because this wasn't just a run, it was a race against time. He darted toward the street where Mr. Jackson, Howard's close friend, ran his small shop. Jackson noticed Buddy sprinting toward him, something clearly wrong. Buddy was usually calm, but today, his frantic barks told a different story. He tugged at Jackson's pant leg, then quickly stepped back, barking again before dashing toward the park. Jackson understood immediately. Something was wrong. Without a second thought, he followed Buddy, running as fast as he could. As soon as they reached the park, Jackson's eyes widened in shock. "Oh my God!" he gasped, spotting Howard lying unconscious on the ground. He fumbled for his phone and immediately called an ambulance. Buddy didn't leave Howard's side. He whimpered softly, licking Howard's hand, as if trying to wake him up, between life and death. Minutes later, the ambulance arrived. But every second mattered. The paramedics swiftly lifted Howard onto the stretcher, preparing to transport him to the hospital. Buddy tried to jump into the ambulance, but the staff stopped him. He wasn't allowed inside. As the ambulance doors closed, Buddy stood frozen. Then, he did the only thing he could. He ran after it. His small paws pounded against the asphalt, his breath visible in the freezing air. But no matter how fast he ran, he couldn't keep up. Reaching the hospital, he collapsed outside the entrance, exhausted. He sat there, eyes fixed on the doors, waiting, praying in the only way he knew how. Inside, doctors worked quickly. Tests revealed Howard had suffered a mild heart attack. If Buddy hadn't brought help in time, things could have been far worse. Jackson told the doctors everything, how Buddy had run to him, how he had led him back, how he had done everything in his power to save Howard. One of the doctors shook his head in amazement. "That's not just a dog," he said softly. "That's a guardian." When Howard woke up, hours passed. Then, slowly, Howard's eyes fluttered open. He saw blurred figures around him, his head pounding. The first thing he managed to say, in a weak whisper, was, "Buddy, where is he?" Jackson smiled. "He's right outside. Been waiting for you this whole time." Howard's eyes filled with tears. Moments later, the door opened, and Buddy was finally allowed inside. As soon as he saw Howard awake, he leapt onto the bed, licking his hands, his face, his entire body trembling with relief. Howard, his hands still weak, placed them on Buddy's head. "You saved my life, little friend," he murmured. Buddy let out a soft whimper, nuzzling into his touch as if saying, "And I'd do it again." It was a moment that touched everyone in the room. Howard and Buddy's bond wasn't just that of a man and his pet. It was something deeper, something unbreakable. A friendship that had crossed the boundaries of life and death. Howard lay semi-reclined on the hospital bed, while Buddy sat quietly beside him. His deep, watchful eyes never left Howard, as if he refused to let him be alone for even a moment. Howard gently ran his hand over Buddy's head. A tear welled up in his eye. This little dog, who had once shivered alone in the snow, had now become the most precious companion of his life. Howard's health improved rapidly. A few days later, the doctors decided to discharge him. As soon as he stepped outside, Buddy wagged his tail excitedly, running around in circles, as if he knew today was a special day. "Come on, Buddy. Let's go home," Howard said with a smile. Buddy immediately trotted beside him, his tiny paws tapping against the pavement. After returning home, Howard realized just how empty his life had been before Buddy. This little dog had filled every corner of his world with joy and purpose. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Howard made an important decision. He picked up the phone and called a nearby veterinary clinic, officially registering Buddy as his pet, securing his place forever. Then, he called Jackson. "I need a favor," Howard said. "If anything ever happens to me, I want to make sure Buddy is taken care of. He's not just a pet, he's family." Jackson chuckled. "Don't worry, Buddy will always be safe. But honestly, I don't think he's going to let you go that easily." Howard's life had completely transformed. Every morning, he took long walks with Buddy. They visited the park, played with children, and interacted with people. The once lonely and reserved man had turned into someone full of life and laughter. And it was all because of Buddy's love and loyalty. One evening, as they sat in the park watching the sunset, Howard sighed and said softly, "Sometimes, I wonder, if I hadn't saved you that night, how empty my life would have been." Buddy rested his head on Howard's lap, closing his eyes as if to say, "And I will always be here with you." Howard smiled, gazing up at the sky. Life had given him the greatest gift of all, a faithful friend. And so, the story of Howard and Buddy became a timeless tale of love, sacrifice, and unbreakable friendship, one that would never grow old. If this story of Buddy and the old man touched your heart, let us know in the comments. Have you ever witnessed a bond between a human and a dog that changed your perspective? Share your experiences below. We'd love to hear them. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and stay tuned for more heartwarming stories that celebrate the unbreakable connections in our lives. Because sometimes, kindness sparks miracles in the most unexpected places.